Want to build your career with CMI confidence? Well, it all starts with the tools at your fingertips. CMI creates workplaces full of inspiring leaders with its on-demand resources, network of mentors, and industry-leading accreditations. Search CMI Confidence today.
This session is recorded and will be available on the CMI website and YouTube channel. Join the conversation by using the live chat box for your questions and comments. We'll answer as many as we can during the Q&A.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Intrapreneurial Mindset, How to Drive Innovation and Change digital event. My name is Mary Bolawale and I am an events coordinator at CMI. Don't forget to join the conversation by using the live chat box and we'll answer as many questions as we can during the Q&A. I will now hand over to Yemi Oluseun to begin today's event.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Mary. It's my delight to be here. Can I just confirm you can hear me okay? And all good? Great. So thank you very much, everybody, for being here. My name is Yemi Oluseun. As Mary said in her introduction, today's session is on entrepreneurial mindset and how to drive change and innovation. I'm just going to try to get up my slides on the screen. Mary, can you help me? Okay, yeah, there you go. Got my slides up now. So welcome again, and thank you so much for joining. A bit about me. My name is Yemi Oluseun. I help businesses drive delivered growth and digital transformation programs. I'm also an experienced intrapreneur. So I pitched, whilst I was at Barclays, and I won the Barclays Social FinTech Innovation Hackathon, and I was actively involved in the corporate incubation program as well. So I'm going to be sharing today, not just from theory, but also from lived experiences of having to drive change as well. I've spent 15 years of my career doing this. So it's my delight to be here. But before we get started, can I just ask everyone, please, in the chat for me, can you just tell me what industries you're from? I just want to know who I'm talking to, who's in the audience. So just put in finance, manufacturing in the chat. Tell me where you're from, please. What industries are represented? Give it a few seconds. Come on, people, don't leave me hanging. Chats are really quiet. Anybody there? Mary, can you hear me okay? There's no, I'm just surprised there's no responses. Oh, there you go. They're adding them in the comment section. Oh, I'm sorry, it's me, guys. Sorry, it's my first time using this platform. Thank you so much I was thinking, why are they leaving me hanging? Thank you. Wow, it's a mixed house. Thank you. So education, prop tech, manufacturing, IT, further education. Wow, thank you so much. It's a delight to have a mixture of experience. So let's get started. I want to keep this section as interactive as possible. Now I know where to see your comments. I'm going to keep an eye on the comments as we go through. So feel free to put the questions in the chat. We're going to have time at the end as well to take Q&A as we progress as well. So let's kick off. So the agenda for today is to talk about 10 key areas I wanted to cover, right? Is why entrepreneurship. I wanted to also walk you through a roadmap on how you may think about driving entrepreneurship in your respective industries and companies, and I'll take you through each of the steps. There's about 7 steps I'll be walking you through. I'll take you through each one, which is all the steps that we talked about, and then we'll recap it, and I'll open up the floor for Q&A if there are no questions that come through the chat as we progress. So without further ado, let's kick off. Introduction. Why even bother, right, with entrepreneurship? Like, what's this entrepreneurship thing about? Why bother? My day job, 9 to 5, is already busy enough. And there's 5 key reasons I want you to consider when you think about it. I think one reason that comes to mind for me is it's the best of both worlds, right? You get to have the safety of a 9 to 5 job and a fixed salary, but you could also pursue enjoy the creativity of entrepreneurship as well. So you get the best of both. It's also great for professional development and growth because it allows you to develop skills that you may not get in your standard 9 to 5 job, and also gives you exposure to like management and leadership and helps you advance your career. Third is around like recognition. So the more you put out your ideas out there and drive the change, you're seen more as the thought leader and the expert in the sector that you're driving innovation in. So it's good recognition as well for yourself personally. Fourthly, impact, as the saying goes, be the change you want to see, right? So if you see anything that you feel is not optimal in your business or your organization, then you could be that one that is a catalyst that drives that change as well. So it could be one reason to consider it. And then finally, job satisfaction. the most satisfied people tend to be the guys that are on the field playing, right? Because when you sit on the armchair and you're just analyzing things, when you get stuck in, you get more value. The more you put in, the more you get out of it as well. So you probably would get more satisfaction from your roles by actually helping shape the organization and drive innovation as well. So I want to propose this as one of the potential 5 reasons you may want to consider intrapreneurship. In terms of, I suppose, how you may want to go about delivering it, I have this 7-step roadmap that I find to be very useful. So as a bit of background, as I said previously, I have been an entrepreneur at Barclays, so driving change internally. I've also now, in the last 7 years of my career, worked very closely with growth stage startups. So working from idea stage, so the guys that just have ideas of what they want to build, all the way through to like corporate and exit. So from my experience, I've come up with like 7 key milestones or 7 key checkpoints in the growth and innovation journey. So I'll be walking you through this in this session today, just a quick overview. So we'll talk about how awareness is the key starting point to any innovation. Knowing yourself, knowing the company, and knowing your macro environment context has to be the first starting point. Secondly, being able to identify a problem or a potential area for innovation as well. We'll talk about how you could go about doing that. Then thirdly, we'll talk about like how once you've identified the problem, how you can then go about crafting a solution and coming up with a 1 or 2-liner that encapsulates what you're offering the market. And then fourth, we'll talk about how you find product market fit. So how do you make sure this solution that you have, there's actually demand for it and people actually want it? Because the worst thing you want to do is to go away and create this fancy thing and spend all the time and nobody cares, right? It's how do you make sure you find that product market fit first before you then push the idea further? And then fifth, we'll talk about how once you find product market fit, how can you scale the idea by profit hacking and by increasing the lifetime value of the customers that you found in your ecosystem. 6, we'll talk about how you then incorporate into the organization and make it BAU and make it like standard from being project mode to being BAU mode. And then finally, once an entrepreneur, always an entrepreneur. Like, so once you've bitten the entrepreneur, once you got in on this side of the world, you probably want to keep on doing it, right? So it's like, how do you keep your entrepreneurship journey open and what else can you explore going forward? So that would be the scope of what we're covering today. By the way, I see your question, but let me come back to that in a minute because I don't want to get sidetracked. Is it a separate designation for intrapreneur? I don't think it's a separate designation. It's just, I suppose, what you do on your day job, but the role could then involve, depending on how successful the project becomes, you can then end up carving out a whole brand new role for yourself if the project or the innovation you introduce to the organization is successful. So let's kick off. First one, awareness, right? So it's twofold. It's knowing yourself as the intrapreneur and also knowing your organization. And in my experience of working as an entrepreneur and also working with lots of intrapreneur and entrepreneurial teams, there are 3 key skill sets that you may want to consider for any kind of successful innovation or growth journey, right? You want to have at least 3 skill sets. So the first one is somebody that's going to be the visionary, the founder. So who's the idea generator person. Secondly, who is going to be the strategist. So once the idea has been formed, somebody needs to take that idea and create like a 5-year roadmap or make it real, create a plan out of it. And then that's the strategist or the CEO type person. And then thirdly, an executor, someone that will take that 5-year plan and then actually start executing on the plan to have a tangible outcome. So those 3 skill sets at the very minimum are the skill sets that any kind of growth or innovation or project team will need. And this, by the way, is what makes entrepreneurship challenging, right? Because at the very beginning, when you're starting, it might just be yourself and you, right? So you may have to wear all 3 hats and keep juggling between all 3. Or if you're fortunate enough to have a team that you can build, then you probably want to see how you guys would divide these 3 functions amongst yourself. When these 3 skill sets are in balance, then it feels a lot more dynamic. It feels like an idea that's ready to fly and to scale. But when it's not as well in balance, you start to notice things like probably coming across as a bit superficial. So if, for example, you're a team or yourself, you're very clear on the purpose of what you want to, on the vision you want to implement into the world. And also you're very commercially aware. So you understand how the market works. You understand how to create like strategy from a big idea, but you're not so good on delivering actual outcomes. You may come across quite superficial. So you may find that you're constantly talking about the idea, the product, but nothing ever comes out of it, right? It's just always lots of managers, but no one is actually doing anything, right? Or you may find teams where people are they know exactly how to do strategy. They know how to deliver on products, but there's no clarity of vision. So they're just doing a lot of stuff and there's always constant change, but it doesn't feel like there's any clear direction that things are going towards, right? So it may come across as very hustlery, like it's like the vision changes every day because it's not clear from the get-go. Or finally, again, when there's no balance, you may find that people may come across as idealistic because they know exactly what they want to build. They're good at getting stuff done, but they haven't really taken the time to understand the market and understand people and create like an actual go-to-market plan, sales and marketing plan. So they're very idealistic on what they're building. So they almost have the mindset of, I'm just going to create it and demand will come from because it's a great product, right? So hopefully you can start to appreciate why having these 3 skill sets in balance is one of the starting points to any kind of innovation journey, right? Is knowing which of these come to you naturally and which of them is a bit more of a challenge. And at least if you're aware of it, then you can start to practically try and seek out help, or you just being aware is a big starting point in managing any kind of downsides, right? So it's awareness first. So what I want to spend the next few minutes talking about is, because I think so in terms of clarity of purpose, commercial awareness, and technical competency, I find that commercial awareness I'll cover later on when I talk about scaling and how to build sales funnel, because a large part of commercial awareness is really thinking about the go-to-market plan and how you're going to take customers from brand awareness all the way through to customers and then hopefully to evangelists. I'll talk about that in the 5th step of the roadmap. But for this slide, I really wanted to focus on how you can get clarity of purpose, right? Yes, it will be recorded. It's on the YouTube channel. So how you can get clarity of purpose. And a framework I love for clarity of purpose, by the way, is a framework called Ikigai. So I'm going to take you to the next slide. We'll talk about Ikigai. By the way, in the chat, has anybody heard of Ikigai? Can I get a yes or no in the chat? Yes, no, no, yes. Ikigai is foreign. What is this thing? Who's head of Ikigai? No, no. Okay, that's good. So we get to learn new stuff today, Claire. I like it. Thank you. Everybody else is quiet. No, no. Hey, there's a delay to this thing. No, no. Great. I like it. So there's a lot of no's in the chat. So you get to learn something new today. Amazing. So Ikigai is a Japanese framework that means reason for being. And essentially, it's 4 overlapping circles. And the idea is that if you find what you love, what you're good at, what you can be paid for, and what the world needs, and you find the overlap of all 4, then you effectively find your purpose. And if you found your purpose, then you start to get into flow. So I like the Ikigai as a good starting point for what exactly is our purpose, what exactly am I trying to create. So for people that struggle, I like to suggest the Ikigai framework. But then the question then becomes, but what if you don't know what you love? What if you don't know what you're good at? Then don't worry, I've got you. I have a few more models I'd like to share with you. So one of the models I like in terms of finding what you love is this psychometric tool by some MIT professor. He's essentially categorized people into 8 work styles. So whether you're more of a technical type person, if you want a lifestyle type challenge, or if you're more of an autonomy seeker. So by taking this, by the way, I'm going to put in the chat, I will put a link to all this surveys so you can go take them yourself offline. You don't need to use this surveys, by the way. I just find them to be a good guide. If for whatever reason you're not clear and you need a starting point, I find that these tools are a good way to get some clarity and a baseline starting point. So in terms of what you love, I like this as a good starting point because, as I say, you take the survey and it gives you some idea of the kind of roles that you may enjoy. So are you the kind of person that would like a general management kind of role, or you want to like an autonomy kind of role? Because when you're clear on the kind of stuff you like yourself, then hopefully it will drive the kind of innovations that you may want to participate in, right? Because if the innovation does not align with you, then potentially you will not have the stamina to carry it through to fruition. So it's good to know what kind of working style, first of all, you love, and try and set yourself up for success. Secondly, what are you good at? A tool I love for this is the Myers-Briggs, right? So Myers-Briggs categorizes people into into 16 personality types based on 4 parameters. So it'll tell you if you're mainly introverted or extroverted, how you process information. So are you more of a sensor or are you more intuitive in how you process information? Are you more of a thinker? Are you more of a feeler? And are you the kind of person that likes to keep your options open, or are you very decisive and judgmental? Not judgmental, decisive. The J is judgmental, but I don't like that judgment, because the J just means decisive, right? And the P more perceptive, open to different possibilities. So again, by taking this test, you get a sense of what you're and when you take it, it will not only categorize you into a type, a personality type, it will also tell you the kind of tasks or the kind of work that you may find fulfilling depending on your strengths as well. But one thing to say here is please do not take this test and use it as the reason not to explore other parts of your personality. It just shows you what comes naturally, what's the default mode for you, right? It doesn't mean that because you tend to be introverted, you can't ever do anything that's extroverted. I just don't like people feeling like they have to be pigeonholed because a test told them that, right? So it's not to pigeonhole people. It's just as a starting point, so you know what comes easily, and then try and set yourself up for success based on your own self-knowledge of yourself. So we talked about what you're good at. I think it's also important to know the flip side, what you're not so good at. So what are you like when things are not working out for you? Like, how do you tend to behave and how do you tend to like handle affairs? I think knowing this means that you can also, again, set yourself up for success. And also you can potentially tell your team, hey, listen, if I start behaving in a certain way, it could potentially mean that I'm stressed. And this is how you can help me decompress and help me get back to flow. So again, I'm going to put a link in the chat to all these tests. So I think it's a good way to know what you're not so good at, again, so you can manage and make sure that what you're trying to introduce to the organization does not trigger you in a way that is not good and then sabotages the innovation that you are trying to drive. And then penultimately, what the world needs, right? So if you ever struggle with what the world needs, I think the UN has done a good job of categorizing the world needs into 17 groups. I know there's people that they're critics of this model, but I think it's a good starting point, right? To kind of know, okay, where are the pocket of needs or the broad categorizations of needs in the world, and use that as a starting point for what kind of, which of these appeal to you as a starting point, right? And then finally, what you can be paid for. Before, I used to say go on job boards and talk to people and get inspiration, but actually these days, ask ChatGPT. So if you've done all the 4 things that we've mentioned, all you need to go is go into ChatGPT and say, hi, ChatGPT, act as a career coach or act as an innovation consultant. I am Myers-Briggs, ENTJ. My career anchor is lifestyle. My saboteur assessment is hyperachiever. Tell me what kind of careers, what kind of innovation would be great for me. And surprisingly, it would actually spit out some useful stuff. I've put screenshots of me trying to do it on myself, and it actually came with some really useful pointers as starting points to get the thinking process going. So all this to say, if you're struggling with like getting clarity of what's my purpose, what do I want to do, where am I going, I think this is hopefully these tools are a good starting point to help you in the self-reflection process. So that was it for yourself. And then now we move on to the business. So now you know who you are, you know what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are, what will work for you and what wouldn't work for you. I think it's also important to understand your business. So the business you're trying to introduce this innovation into, what are they about? What's the culture of that business? What's the vision? What's the mission? What are the core values of the business? What is the strategy for the business for that year or for the next 5 years? And then based on that, what are the objectives and the key results that management or whoever, or shareholders, depending on what your hierarchy is, has already set up, and making sure that what you're introducing aligns as much as possible to these things that the organization has already set up. So again, having this awareness of this is the second starting point. So you know yourself, know your business. And then thirdly, is your organization ready for change? Can they actually even handle this innovation idea that you're trying to introduce to the market? Do they have the mental and emotional capacity for transformation? Because it could be that the organization has been through so much change already that right now is just not a good time. It could be the best idea in the world, but it's not going to fly because people are just drained, right? Or it could be that secondly, the organization doesn't have the skills in-house. So you need to do a lot more work training people up and getting them up to speed on skills first before trying to introduce any change. So where are you in terms of internal skill set? And then thirdly, I think also quite most importantly, is this potential innovation that you're thinking of introducing, how is it going to disrupt the current status quo? Like whose job or whose soft power is going to be potentially shaken by you introducing this innovation, and making sure, so your awareness of this means that you can start to proactively plan and anticipate any resistance and proactively hopefully manage it before it materializes. So to summarize, awareness, you want to know first yourself, like say, what's your own ikigai, what's your own purpose, mission, values, what are you strong at, what are you not so strong at, having that clear. And then also understand your business. So the business you're working within right now, what is their vision? What is their mission? What are the OKRs they have? And is the organization ready for change in the first place? So That is the first starting point to any kind of innovation work. That's level 1 in the roadmap. We move on now to level 2, problem statement. So now we know who we are, we know what our business is about. We now want to go deeper into the problems. It's like, what problems have we identified that are potentially ripe for innovation and disruption? And just in case anyone is struggling with like finding innovative ideas, I think one of the great ways to do it is this model I'm going to talk you through now. Is most businesses, the core of it tends to focus around 3 things, right? Is they're either wanting more customers, or they're wanting to increase prices, right? Increase prices or reduce costs, that's point 2. Or they want to sell more to the existing customers. It's like, how can we add more value to these existing customers that we have? That tends to be so these 3 areas tend to be the best way to get growth. So if you are working on a growth, when I'm working on a growth project and a business comes and says, hey, I want to grow, that's the 3 areas I'm looking at. Is like, so how can we get you more customers, right? So are we going to do more marketing and get sales more up to speed so you can get more customers? Or how can we increase the prices of what we're currently offering by offering more value so we can increase prices? Or how can we reduce the cost of what we're offering so we can have more profit from the revenues that we generate, point 2. Or how can we sell more to our existing customers so that we can increase the lifetime value of the customers? So those kind of tend to be the 3 lenses I'm looking at when I'm trying to drive growth. And so I want to suggest that if you're struggling to come up with innovative ideas, you may want to think about these questions when you look at your business. So how can I help my business get more customers? How can I help my business increase value and so increase the prices, or reduce costs and so get more profit? Or how can I help my business sell more to our existing customer base? That might be these 3 questions hopefully will be a good starting point to help you think about potential areas for innovation if you don't already have one. So once you have an idea for innovation, then the second question that's worth asking even before pushing further is, this thing I'm trying to innovate on, is it worth pursuing, right? Is the target market for my innovation, is it a good target market? And I want to propose 4 questions you may want to ask yourself, right? Is this target market, are they profitable? Like, are they going to be able to pay for this thing that I'm offering them, right? Because if you're creating this amazing product, but the people you're selling it to can't pay you, then it's not going to happen, right? So the example I give there is, or you have to find somebody else that can pay. The example I give there is, you want to help students, for example, with their CV so they can interview well. It sounds great and fabulous, but the problem with students sometimes is that they don't always have the money to pay for the services, right? So unless you're able to, say, for example, find a third party that can fund the project, and so it becomes more financially viable, it may be quite challenging to push it forward as a project. So you may find it challenging when you come to like writing the business case and getting justification for sponsoring the project. So first question, is this potential target market, is it profitable? Secondly, do they even care about, does the target market that I'm potentially going to be selling this innovation to, do they care about solving the problem, right? And the way you know they care about it is when you talk to them about the problem, they're already doing something to try and solve it. So if somebody says they have a problem, but they're doing nothing about trying to solve it, then maybe it's not really a problem, right? Or maybe it's not as painful of a problem. So you may have a harder time trying to sell it to somebody because they're not that bothered about it, because they're not doing actively anything to try and solve the problem. Thirdly, are they easy to find and are they easy to market to? Are you going to try and find a needle in a haystack, or are these potential customers that you're creating this innovative solution for, are they going to be easy to find? Hopefully hopefully it's a yes, because you're doing it within an organization that already has existing customer base. So I'm hoping that for point 3, it should be more or less by default a yes, but it's still worth considering. And then 4th, is it a growing customer base? So this innovative solution you're introducing, are you introducing it to a market that is growing, or is it like a shrinking population? And in which case, there's not going to be as much of an appetite to invest into a population that's shrinking anyway, because there's no growth. So 4 questions you may want to consider once you find your potential problem. You think you know who you want to solve the problem for, but run it by these 4 questions first and ask yourself, is it really worth pursuing? Once you think you have that, then I think it's also worth kind of just thinking about it in terms of dollar amount. Like, does it actually make sense to solve this problem? So you've identified the problem we talked about. You've talked to potential customers, right, to see if they're good fit for you. Now you want to try and put some monetary dollar value on how much this problem really is worth, right? Is how big is the problem? I do this presentation, by the way, for startups as well as entrepreneurs. So some of this may or may not be applicable, but it's still worth, I think, bearing in mind, right? Is once you've solved this problem, is this problem only specific to your organization, or is it such that you can actually potentially spin it off and sell it off and become like a standalone product in of itself? If that's the case, then what's the total addressable market for this product or this solution you're introducing worldwide, right? So how big can this thing go, right? Then secondly, what's the serviceable available market to you? Because of course, you're not going to be targeting the whole market once. You're probably going to be targeting just a demographic within that entire scope of marketplace available to you. So what's the serviceable available market size? And then within that available market size, what's obtainable to you? So knowing those three levels would help you to get a sense of how big potentially this thing can get and if it's really worth pursuing. And then finally, it's worth considering as well what the macro environment is doing, right? Are there going to be any changes in the law, in regulation that may or may not be favorable to what you're looking to propose? So a model I like for that is the PESTLE model, right? So you can consider. I'm just looking at the chat, so hence the distraction. We're looking at whether there's any political changes, economic changes, social changes, technology changes, legal changes, or environmental change that might impact positively or negatively what you're looking to propose. Having those thoughts in mind, I think, is a key thing to think about when you're defining the problem. Hopefully that all makes sense. Does that make sense so far? Before we move on to the next step 3. Make sense? Thumbs up, yes in the chat, no, or questions? Because I can't see faces. So I want to know if it's making sense. Can I get a yes or no? Or maybe? Thank you, guys. Thank you so much. Thank you. I appreciate the participation. Thank you. I see your yeses. Okay, so now we know who we are. We know what our organization is about. We know what problem we're trying to solve. Now we want to then create a value statement, right? And come up with a 1-liner or 2-liner that we can use to sell the idea to people. And what I want to propose is what you want to think about when you're defining this potential solution is 4 questions. So people tend to have 4 objections when they're told about innovations. And ideally, you want your value statement to capture those 4 objections beautifully. The 4 questions tend to be, so what's the dream outcome? Like, what's going to be the outcome of this innovation? What's in it for me? Kind of question, essentially, right? And so it's knowing that. And usually the dream outcome tends to be aligned to more money or more love, more wealth, more time, more prestige. That tends to be one of those 5, tends to be what the outcome would be should the innovation be successful, right? So it's what is that dream outcome, being clear on that. Secondly, what's the likelihood of them achieving that dream outcome that you've talked about? So it's like, if you don't achieve it, like what guarantee do you have that makes you special? This is where I suppose having that self-awareness helps. So say you've done it before somewhere else, or you have special accreditation. It's like, how do I know this is not going to be as risky? Trusting you to deliver the solution for me. Like, what makes you the right person to do it, essentially, is the question. Or are you going to give me my money back if it's not successful? So it's what's the likelihood of achievement? Thirdly, how much time is going to be required to deliver this outcome that you're talking about? Are we going to have to wait a decade to see any results, or can we start seeing some value from when? So it's having that answer thought about. And then fourth, how much effort are we going to have to put into getting this outcome that you're selling to us, right? Those tend to be the 4 key kind of objections that people have when they hear any kind of innovative solution. So thinking about answers to those, and then based on those answers, crafting up a 1-liner is a great starting point when it comes to defining what your offer is or what your product is. And an example I'm putting there is if, for example, you're offering, let's stick to a career coach. I like the career coaching example, but I feel like most people can relate to career coaching. It's not too technical that it's far out for people to relate to. So say you're a career coach and you want to offer, I don't know, or you're a youth organization and you want to offer career coaching, as opposed to saying, hey, we're going to offer 6-week career coaching. It just sounds a bit bland, right? That's like, what does that even mean? Doesn't really tell me anything. But if I'm talking to like various people in the previous section, your problem identification, you've identified that who you want to target are people that want to get into like top tech companies and they want to get product manager roles. But the problems that they're having is taking too long to get those interviews, and they're not sure how to navigate it. And you've come up with a solution on how you can help them. A potential way you may want to craft that would be get a 6-figure, so money. So you're going to get more money, 6-figure FANG. FANG, by the way, is the top tech companies, so Facebook, Apple, Amazon, Netflix, Google, PM role in 6 weeks and 6 interviews or less, or your money back. So hopefully you can see from that one-liner that I've tried to encapsulate all the 4 points I talked about in there. And by the way, I'm using FANG on purpose. I'm using jargon there on purpose because I want to use the language that people used to me when I was interviewing them. So because if, for example, in this example here, I'm assuming that when I was interviewing people, they were saying, oh yeah, I really want to get a FANG role. I want to get, if that's the language your customers and your people were using, you want to use that language back to them, because then they feel like it's one of them selling the ideas. People kind of like things that are similar to what they already know, right? And it just makes it easier to kind of be seen as one of the crowd than saying something like, in the top tech companies, like, we call it FANG company. So it's incorporating the language where it makes sense to do so for the right audience. So it's in this context, it's not jargon, because the guys I'm talking to, I'm presenting this to, they get it. In fact, I want it to almost be very Marmite, so that the guys that love it, and I can get evangelists because they see themselves in it. So that was actually done intentionally, having the FANG role. So this may be one of the things you want to consider, right? So when it comes to defining the product, is thinking of those 4 questions and having answers to that. And then once you have those answers, trying to craft a 1-liner or 2-liner that succinctly encapsulates what you're trying to deliver to the market. Because the next step of this is going to be you testing this 1-liner and seeing what resonates with people, what doesn't resonate. And we'll talk about that in a minute. But that was it. And so once you have this 1-liner, I think you now have enough information to then go and say, okay, let's create a business case, a high-level business case, so I can start to present this information to the relevant people. And I wanted to suggest that when people think about business cases, for some reason, they think they have to write War and Peace. And I feel like, I don't think it needs to be that complicated. I think as a starting point for now, a simple 1-pager business case could be all you need to do right now. So I put a template on here. Feel free to take a screenshot, by the way, and do with it as you please. If you do use it on social media, it would be great to tag me. I'll repost you and thank you for the post. But yeah, this is kind of how I do it in organizations I work with. Right, so it's at the top here, capturing what the opportunities or what the problem is that you've identified, given the step 2, what the key deliveries are that you're going to be delivering, the timelines you think you're going to have them by, the key milestones, any kind of financials that you've calculated. At this point, it's still very high level, so rough estimates, any key contacts, any risks or issues you've identified, you want to capture them here, and what your potential next steps might be should the project get approved, or should you get budget to do the delivery. So you may want to, at this point, start putting all this together so you can start pitching the idea following your organization's budget approval process. So that was it for step 3, right? So in step 3, we talked about being able to clearly articulate what you're offering, so what the product is, by answering the 4 questions. And then based on this, we now have our first key deliverable, a 1-page business case, right? So we move on to step 4. Step 4, we're now trying to make sure that what we think the market needs, that the market actually needs it, right? So trying to test to make sure we have product market fit for this idea. And I just want to define quickly what product market fit is, right? So product market fit really is when 3 things are in place. Is when you have a problem that people are willing to pay for, like, so you present the solution to them and they resonate with it and they're like, oh, I get it. How much is it? I want to pay for it, right? So it's they understand the product that you're offering, they're willing to pay for it, and also you know exactly where to find them on a repeatable basis. So you're not in a constant hustle or wondering where your next customer is going to come from, because you've kind of you're quite clear on who your ideal customer profile is. Your ideal customer profile understands your product and they like it and they want to pay for it. At that point, you have the fit. So that's really what the goal of this step here is for. And the way I propose that it's done is by using MVP thinking, right? So it's, as opposed to you thinking, I want to just go, can you please share the slides? Some slides are difficult to read. I think we'll share it afterwards. Tafia, we'll share it afterwards, but hopefully you can zoom and see it a little bit. Yeah. So the way I propose doing the product market fit, right, is by thinking about is by using the MVP model thinking, right? So as opposed to kind of saying, oh, I have this solution, I'm going to go from 0 to 100 and build this perfect solution, is start small. So it's, you have that 1-liner that we've created of our product offering. Maybe you next want to then create like a little flow chart and show it to your potential customers, see what the feedback is, see what they are not so clear on, what they think doesn't make sense, take their feedback, iterate, maybe build a landing page, build a bit of an explainer video, try and get some budget or some funding to build some features of the product, try and do it partially manually. So concierge and Wizard of Oz are terminologies in MVP land, but essentially it's doing things partially manually. So it's half automated, half manually, and then slowly get to a point where you have a fully automated end-to-end feature. Now, by doing it this way iteratively, you actually get to build participation and collaboration through the organized. People kind of feel involved and feel like they were included in this solution that you're building, and because they engage, the likelihood of adoption increases, number one, and then number two, the likelihood of you building something that nobody wants as well also decreases as well. So I find this iterative way a great way to get to product market fit. This is one step that I think in corporate we tend to skip over, because budget is not, well, within reason, sometimes budget is not a problem. Like you can get given budget to go do stuff, and because you don't take people through the steps, you end up delivering something that nobody really wants. But in startup land, because you're constrained by budget, you're forced to get creative and to do things slowly. So we have to, I think, as entrepreneurs, actively manage for this and make sure that we are as scrappy as can be when we are building this new innovative idea, right? Is what is the smallest viable thing I can build to test the market, get some traction, and then when I get the positive feedback, then build some more, and on and on and on. So that's what this is about. By the way, please remember to keep the questions in the chat, because I'm trying to keep an eye on it. And then step 5 is, so at this point now, I expect that, as we said here, so you're aware, self-awareness and company awareness, you know the problem, you know exactly what you're solving for people, because you have a good problem statement that hopefully uses language that your customers understand. You've also found product market fit because you've been iterating and involving people and collaborating with people, and so they are engaged in the whole creation journey. And now you've found the fits, so now it's time to scale this idea that you have and increase the lifetime value or the scope of the project. And what I want to suggest is you want to potentially want to think about creating a sales funnel at this point, right? Is think about so how can I get more people being aware of my product? So from being aware of the solution I've created and nurture them and then convert them into my offering, and then make sure we deliver on the value that I promised them upfront. And then once we delivered, how can we keep them as ambassadors or as evangelists of this service that we've offered? And should things go sour, or should people need to be offboarded? Hopefully it doesn't happen very often, but if it does happen, what's my process going to be for that? Would I have a strategy to win them back into my ecosystem? Or what's the strategy for monitoring potential churn and planning a win-back strategy? So at this point, you're thinking about all these steps, there's 6 steps, right? So it's depending on the idea, is in your organization, because this is I don't know if it's depending on what the solution is. If it's all just going to be internal customers, then it's what's the best way to get this solution in front of as many eyes as possible. So do I want to leverage the intranet in my company? Do I want to leverage town halls? Who are the biggest network brokers in the organization that I want to tell and make sure that they're sponsors and they're allies that I can piggyback on? So it's planning that out. So what's the awareness strategy going to be? Step 2, again, is this one tends to be skipped very often, right? Is we don't always appreciate how much time it takes to nurture people from when they first become aware of our solution to when they're now ready to actually get on board. People need a while to kind of warm up to ideas sometimes, right? Because if you think about it, it's taking you yourself a while to create this thing, right? Probably took a lot of iteration of thinking. So extend the same grace to your colleagues as you try and introduce ideas. So it's how can I best nurture them? How can I best create awareness and grow interest in this stuff? And also take their feedback in and keep iterating until they're ready to be converted into customers. And then once they're converted, how do I make sure I deliver on what I said I was going to deliver? And how do I keep them retained? And hopefully they never get offboarded. But if they do get offboarded, what's the process for that? I've also put here at the bottom key metrics that you may want to, or some metrics that you may want to track. You don't have to use these ones, but I just particularly like these ones, right? So I find that, for example, if you have a good brand awareness strategy, you want to track how many leads or how many potential people you're talking to, or how many people are getting visibility of what you're creating, because then it shows you how well, because if, for example, month on month, your reach is decreasing, then it's not looking good for conversions, right? But if you can see that your reach is increasing month on month, then hopefully it's a leading indicator that conversions might be higher, or are likely to be higher, provided, of course, you're selling it correctly. Because if, say, you're getting enough leads but you're not converting, then are you not explaining something properly? Because then at least you can tell which part of the chain has the bottleneck or where the problem is. So this is why I think it's important to think about them. So for each step, think about the metrics to track, and then you can track and see where potentially problems are, and you can then take remedial action based on the problems you've identified. So that's it really for this step on thinking about growth and thinking about scale, right? So a large part of this work is thinking about the customer journey from brand awareness all the way through to retention and maybe offboarding. And then step 6, getting to the penultimate one now, is making it BAU. So it's now you've been going through all this fantastic, a lot of change, a lot of iteration has happened. And the likelihood is that because things have been happening so quickly, there's probably now some inefficiencies that have happened because you're having to be very agile and responsive in things. But over time now, hopefully adoption has increased. You've gotten to a point of stability. You now want to start thinking about how can I incorporate this into the organization's BAU and make it our normal and how we do business overall. So we want to think about not just being a one-man band, because the chances are, because you were the intrapreneur that introduces the organization, it may still be very solely dependent on you as the key man or the key woman driving the change. So it's how can I start making sure I'm documenting processes, and I've got any kind of relevant flow charts, or I've also looked at any inefficiencies in the BAU process and thought about the integration of this new technology or this new product I've created into the existing offering that the business already has. So working with the relevant stakeholders, whoever they might be, to make sure that integration happens and it's adopted seamlessly into BAU. I think it's going to be hard to talk about this one in any more detail. How it's done almost depends on what it is that you've introduced as part of your innovation, right? But the gist of this step really is thinking about, so once you've set it up, it's working, it's profitable, it's great. You now need to take it from being a project to being how we do business, right? So it's working with the relevant BAU stakeholders and making sure it's well adopted, and any kind of training and adoption happens seamlessly. And that's what step 6. And then finally, once this is done, you then want to think about, like, so how do you want to keep staying entrepreneurial or entrepreneurial? Like, what are the next steps or what are the next opportunities? Because to be honest, like, once you're an entrepreneur, you're very used to like going out solving problems and creating new ideas. Chances that you probably want to keep on going, right? Because otherwise you become a bit annoying to other people. So it's like, before you become annoying and start breaking things that are not broken, proactively try and think about, okay, so what's my next step? What's the next thing I want to do after this project has been successful? Do I want to go create new products or new similar things? Do I want to do the same innovation in a new market? Are we going to try and see if we can spin this thing off and make it be a standalone project in of itself outside of the company? Or what are the options post the launch of this innovative solution that we've created, right? So to recap, we talked about 7 key steps in any kind of entrepreneurship or innovation journey, right? So we talked about how you go from you being self-aware first, understanding your organization, talked about how to identify potential room for disruption and making sure that it's a opportunity that's worth pursuing. So how to size it up and how to quantify it. We talked about then how to then craft a value statement and then create a business case, and then find product market fit, step 4. And then 5, create a whole like sales funnel and really understand the user journey from brand awareness all the way through to retention. And then we talked about how you then make the product BAU and incorporate into how business is done. And then finally, your progression onwards. So post this innovation you've introduced to the organization, what do you want to do personally? And also, what does the business want to do with this innovation you've introduced? So that was the core of what I wanted to cover in today's session. I now have a question for everybody. Can I have in the chat? So I don't know if you can unmute. What's your biggest takeaway or any questions? I'm now opening up the floor. I think we've done well for time as well. Yeah, great. We've got 15 minutes. So in the chat, questions, biggest takeaway, what wasn't clear? Let's talk to each other.
Thank you so much, Yemi. That was so insightful. I think we did have 2 questions that that were mentioned. So there was one from Prince, and the question was, how can one use innovation to be entrepreneurial?
How can one use innovation to be entrepreneurial? So innovation, so we talked about this. So innovation is a tool, right? So it's innovation really is just doing stuff differently. It's like, so what can you do that is different to status quo? At the core is the general gist of what innovation means. Being an entrepreneur means, as opposed to you doing it externally for yourself or for your own business, you're driving change within the business you already worked in. So how can you use innovation? I think a starting point is what I've tried to, what I shared here, right? Is thinking about your company right now. Most businesses have three core functions, right? A sales function, marketing, and operations function. Most businesses are either trying to, when they think of growth, they're either trying to get more customers. Says, what innovative ideas have you seen or thought about from your experience, from your life, from talking to customers? Have you seen on how your business or the organization can potentially get more customers, right? What innovative solutions or creations have you seen on how you can increase prices or reduce costs? Or how can we sell more to our existing customers? I don't know if that helps or if that answers the question. Was that Colin that I forgot who asked the question, Mary? Was it Colin that asked the question?
Prince.
Prince, sorry, Prince. Prince, does that answer your question? If not, let me know.
Yeah. To be honest, I believe that's all we have from today because there's no other questions.
Cool. I see some takeaways there, though. So it's innovation is a process, not a moment. Thank you so much, Alan. I love that takeaway. That's great. Thank you for sharing that. This is a lot of work. Will be well suited for a product manager, but great to know there is a methodical approach that I can take. Great, Valerie. No, thank you. But I suppose it also depends on how you pace it. I think it's pacing is the answer to that solution, to that point, Valerie, because it could be simplify, right? It's pacing yourself through that journey, right? And not just trying to do it all at once. So hopefully you're not overwhelmed after this. It's like just do one step at a time and slowly you'll get there. And great takeaways, testing the market and scaling. That's good to know. Thank you, Colin, for sharing that. Toby says, be a C3 leader or build a C3 team. Very helpful to understand the balance. Thank you, Toby. I appreciate you. Thank you for sharing that. Very okay. Thank you, Prince, for confirming that was clear. Thank you for the session, Yemi. Claire says thank you. And everybody else says thank you. Okay. I think we're good. I don't see any questions or any more feedback. Thank you so much, guys. So please do feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn, reach out. Happy to stay in touch. It's my LinkedIn. Happy to stay in touch and all the best with your entrepreneurial journey and keep me posted. My goodness, there's so many slides. Keep me posted on your journey and yeah, let's stay in touch. But thank you so much. Good to see everybody. Take care.
Thank you so much, Yemi, and thank you for sharing your insight. That's it for today's session. Please stay tuned to hear more about CMI membership and thank you for joining us.
Don't forget, as a CMI member, you can find the latest management and leadership insights at managers.org.uk. If you're not yet a member, join our community to discover CMI Confidence with on-demand resources, our network of mentors, and industry-leading accreditations.